today. And Craig is an amazing professional. He's someone that's been out in the recruiting industry for quite a while. He's very influential in Texas. He's been on the national stage for several recruiting conferences, including SourceCon. So that's actually where I met Craig originally. So I have a great deal of respect for Craig and what he's done and the knowledge he has in the space. And it's great to have you on today.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah. So I wanted to get you on because you had a new book out, and it's always fun talking with our thought leaders in recruiting who have a new book. And let's let you plug it a little bit. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote a book called Hiring Humans, and it is how to attract, convert, and retain top talent in the age of automation. And as you know, Mike, all the buzz is about AI right now and how it can fix everything we do in recruiting, make marketing better, messaging, sourcing, selection, all this stuff, right? But that sort of introduces the theory that there is certainly implicit bias built into all software,
Yep.
and we are sort of automating ourselves out of good relationships with our future workforce if we just say,
So
yeah,
true.
let the machines handle everything. So this book is about, yes, using cool tools, AI and everything else, but how to keep the human touch in HR while we're
It's right
doing it.
behind you too.
That's
You have
right.
it right behind you. So
Yeah, it's right
that's
there.
his book right there. So, well, that's great. Do you have anything in particular within it that's something that you think is extremely valuable, that you have a few points that you want to kind of plug without giving the whole book away?
Yeah, so absolutely. The reason um, I finally finished this book, and it's kind of been in my head for years, was the timing was kind of just right. I have always uh, talked about having a good candidate experience and having good communication with your employees and your potential future workforce. And I kind of stopped doing just straight up recruitment marketing and employer branding a few years ago when I realized that we were sort of just attracting candidates and then neglecting the process and the technology that they had to go through in order to apply to a job and get onboarded with our
Hmm.
organizations, right? And so
Right.
I started fixing that conversion aspect of talent attraction and acquisition first, and
Hmm.
then I'll do recruitment, marketing, and branding after if we can prove that we can convert those candidates at the bottom of the funnel. And so there's several steps involved in attracting and the recruitment process, the technology that's involved, and having a good candidate experience and employee experience. And I just kind of got enough case studies with major employers under my belt recently that I
Hmm.
could put them together in a logical manner that makes for a pretty good guidebook on how to do
Great.
it right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And well, just on that point, I think I don't know if you were there for that SourceCon a few years ago. The theme was it was in Anaheim,
Hmm.
and the theme was about we control the robots,
Right.
and that it was all about AI, and that AI might take our jobs in the future, and there was all that buzz around that, and that was as far back as 2017.
Right.
But I don't know if you remember that amazing presentation by Katrina Collier, um, who's in England, right across
Yes.
the pond from us,
Yeah.
and she's put out that book, the robotic proof recruiter, and it's essentially along the same theme, which is
Yes.
really focus on the human side of recruiting and get back to that good relationship building, focusing on the great candidate experience, getting back to people in a timely manner, trying to help candidates understand their value proposition, and help guiding through those steps and being transparent to about that with them. I mean, all those things are so key. But and it's almost like we're going back to basics in a way. Because if you want to be that standout recruiter, the one who's going to make a huge difference, it just always seems to come back to the human element once again. Like it's basic business principles, right? We take care of people, we get back to them, we try to treat them with humanity. But then the amazing thing is that the employer brand is expanded by that. And I can think of no greater thing that drives me crazy more than anything than how recruiters are being treated right now. Like, I don't know if you go just search LinkedIn and you'll see frustration posts from recruiters about how they've been treated in a particular process. And then you're like, why aren't we doing that with our own? So it's like the one group that should be really good at this is the recruiters. And
Right.
so the fact that we're treating our own that way shows that we have a long way to go. So, oh man, it's been wild. And and that's the other thing, workforce planning and forecasting. Like, all these tech companies didn't plan very well. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
they shot
Well,
themselves in the foot, and then we have layoffs. And
I think workforce planning is a myth, right? I mean, just like sales forecasting is a bit of a myth. You
hmm
do all this data analysis, and it turns out that you wouldn't really change much with what you're going to do, even if you have the data.
mm,
Most of the time, when employers go through all this process of generating analytics to forecast things well, it's
hmm
just so that you can report up. And
mm-hmm.
it doesn't turn out that, given the data, would you make monumental changes in the way you go about your business? And the answer is usually, at the end of an exercise like that, is no.
Mm,
We still need to sell
a
as
great
much as
perspective.
possible, right?
Yeah.
We still need to hire as many people as we need to get the work done at that time,
hmm
right? And so we're going to just keep going through this ridiculous cycle over and over again, with or without
That's a
AI's help.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, as AI gets better, it'll probably help us. I mean, I think I was talking with Mike Wolford about this, and I think he was mentioning to me he came down here to Salt Lake City to do a presentation on um, you know, AI and recruiting. Did a really good job, by the way. But he knows that backwards and forwards after having looked at ChatGPT and experimenting with it a little bit. Wrote a really good book on it with the help of ChatGPT. He says that. But what's interesting is he arrived at the conclusion that data and workforce planning is still going to be something that is an important uh, holy grail of talent to try to get to. And AI might be able to help us analyze the data better and put it into more meaningful terms. And that was something he said, which I thought was interesting. So,
So he and I had a conversation on a live stream a couple of weeks back
mhm,
about the economics of AI
mm,
and right what it means to the current economy and what it's doing for the economy and why there is probably an AI bubble, just like there was a
mm,
.com bubble. That
mhm,
right we're already seeing sort of this confluence of um, hype that
mm.
is probably
I think that's a great perspective. Yeah, I agree
better
with you.
than yeah better than what the technology actually is. So
Okay.
what AI is really good at is summarizing, right? It
That's
can
a
look
good,
at
yeah, great point.
vast amounts of data
hmm
and tell you quickly what it means, make it have perspective and give you a little better insight into without having to read um, through pages and pages of a search. You can
hmm
get a quick summary. In fact, I like beyond Bard very much for this because you can do a search and right there in your Google search window, Bard will pop up and summarize the results of the search. It's
That's cool.
fantastic.
Yeah, that's
And
the Bing product, right?
yeah, it's yes. And the
Microsoft.
the fun thing about all of this is that it's not a whole lot different than when we got mobile phones or when we got LinkedIn in recruiting or when we got the internet in recruiting, right? Everyone is up in arms. Oh, this is all going to take our jobs away. But the reality is somebody still has to use the tools. The tools don't
hmm
use themselves.
That's a great
And
point.
when
Yeah.
I started researching this, I installed one of the first enterprise level chatbots on a career site in
hmm
2017. And I did a lot of research and a pretty famous survey to job seekers about how they felt about interacting with chatbots in the
hmm
recruitment process, right? And the majority were fine with it for the most part, but there was still a significant amount of people that prefer a human experience. And when we installed this chatbot, this was DXC technology, right, many years ago. And
Hmm.
Katrina Collier cites all these facts in her book and in that presentation you
Interesting.
mentioned.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great. Great
that
point.
one of the first things that they asked for when interacting with the chatbot was speak to a recruiter. And
Mm,
so we very
interesting.
quickly had to put a mechanism into the Paradox chatbot, the Olivia chatbot,
Hmm.
to pop out to a live person. And that's sort of still the case. I mean, a
Yeah,
lot
for
of
sure.
websites where you can't do that, it's not a great experience. And we shouldn't be
Hmm.
treating our candidates any
So true.
differently than we treat our best customers.
Yeah. I think you have a point. I think, and there's, I think, a Pew Research, I want to say it's Pew Research, that put out it's either them or someone else, but I think it's Pew Research. And they basically said, what was their preference? What is the preferences of candidates in recruitment? And on the far left of the bar was talking to a human being, having a video chat with a recruiter, a phone chat with a recruiter, basically the old stuff
Right.
everybody's used to. And then far on the right, on what they don't prefer as much, was the chatbots and
Yeah,
the AI interaction. So I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but I think it's Pew
I do.
Research. Am I
Yeah.
correct in that one? I think if I remember correctly, I've seen it recently, but it was Jim Shroud at SourceCon who actually pulled that out. I have to go back and see what the actual reference was, but he did a good job of highlighting all the data. And in fact, that's part of what my presentation at SourceCon was about, was looking at some of the data and the feelings that we've been going through since COVID, you know.
Right.
So COVID has brought a whole bunch of maybe they were always there, all these issues, like remote work was probably already always there. Um, Other ones, like artificial intelligence was always there. The candidate experience was always there, but I think it's pushed it back to the forefront again
Yeah.
in a very interesting way in these last 3 years, where just that the pendulum swing from the shortage of talent. Remember 2022 was absolutely bonkers, and then it swung all the way to the right again, where now, I mean, there's still opportunity, but I guess it's interesting how the companies are being careful. So it's just a fascinating uh, pendulum swing that keeps going back and forth.
Well,
And
it's
just in
certainly
a
not.
short period
Yeah.
of time, it's very strange how
Certainly
quickly it
not
all
the
happened.
can. Yeah, it's not the candidates market that we had for the last 2 years
Uh-huh,
for sure. Yeah.
exactly. That's why it's so fascinating. It's just interesting how it's changed so quickly.
Yeah,
So,
and what you discussed earlier about what you read now on LinkedIn and Twitter and Reddit, right? From
oh yeah,
job
Reddit.
candidates and recruiters alike, everybody's having a bad time of it. It's not good, and the culprit most of the time, Mike, is ghosting, right? It's just a
Ghosting or a
lack of
bad process.
it's a lack of communication or a bad process, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's why this book, Hiring Humans, is so timely because it's a really good guide for yes, we need to use the technology available to us to let recruiters do recruiting things and not scheduling appointments and things like that. But we also have to remember that it doesn't do our job for us, which is building relationships.
Exactly. Yeah. You have such a good point on that. And it's interesting you cite Reddit, because I think of one forum that I often go to just to get a pulse check, which is recruiting hell.
Oh, it's
And
great.
and it's so interesting, isn't it? When you go there and you read, oh man, you don't want to be that recruiter who's on recruiting hell, because
Right,
I mean it goes to thousands of people, and just imagine your brand getting burned. And even you can even get roasted on Glassdoor, right?
oh
It's
yeah,
just so interesting if you don't take care of that brand by just getting back to people. It's
right.
so simple, but that's the key to when you talk about employment brand, it's just like do these simple things. And like you talk about all these scientific things, all these big pie in the sky things that people want to do for employment branding, but sometimes it's just as simple as getting back to people and having a tight process. It may be as simple as that. It sounds mundane, but that's the truth of it. It's simple things make for great results.
People who complain want to be heard,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly.
Um, People who are happy don't complain. And so, right, you've done a good job of communicating with them, or they're satisfied with the way things have been. but people who are complaining want to be heard. They want to be recognized. And so, even just like you say on Glassdoor or Indeed or whatever, brand awareness site that you've got to look at where people are Yelp, I mean, whatever. If you just acknowledge their complaint, then you've gone a long way to satisfying what they're complaining about.
Mhm.
And it's a very standard marketing and customer service technique, right? Just acknowledge, don't avoid. But that's another thing that employers are just really scared of. A lot of employers don't have a plan for that, and it's so easy to fix glass door scores, right? I talk about this
Oh
in the
yeah.
book as well. If you were to just have one last meeting with that employee's manager on the way out the door, for the manager to just say thank you for your service, and
Such a
wherever you,
small thing, but it's
yeah,
huge.
wherever you
Yeah.
wherever you go, when you get settled, maybe even here's a $5 Starbucks gift card. Get yourself a cup of coffee and give me a call, and
Hmm.
catch me up on what's going on. Let's make sure we stay in touch because I care about you, and we appreciate what you've done. I mean, right there, you would improve your Glassdoor scores by a couple of points in a matter of months.
You know what's remarkable is just candidate experience. I saw something right back going to recruiting hell, and a candidate had posted when they gave them a $20 gift card to Amazon. It was something like that. But talk about going above and beyond. This was a candidate who interviewed,
Yeah.
and the company took the time to give them an Amazon gift card as a thank you.
Hmm.
And that candidate was so beside themselves. They're like, I've never seen this before.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be that costly either. You could have your CEO, as simple as I heard of a company that's actually having their CEO write a handwritten note
Yeah.
to the candidates who apply and say thank you for applying to us, and
Yeah.
please keep us in mind for the future. And it was so simple. They didn't go forward with them, but that one note changed that candidate's perception of that company and the entire process. They're like, I want to work for that company in the future.
Yeah.
So when the timing's right, that may be the time. And it's fascinating. Just some simple things you can do to make a real big difference in that candidate experience.
It's a white glove experience, right?
That's
And
right. Yeah, you
we
got it.
talk about this a lot. It seems overwhelming to some employers for some reason, but it's not. It can be very simple. And again, a little bit of tech can go a long way to help here as well, right? You
Hmm.
can automate responses, but you can write them better. You can
Oh yeah,
automate,
for
right? You
sure.
can automate interviews, but you can have the communication just be a little more thoughtful. And part of what we measure when we look at a candidate experience is how does the timing and the words and the messaging of everything make you feel, right? And that's a big deal. If you're just looking at, well, we've ticked all the boxes, that doesn't necessarily cut it. And when you go to the next step and say, well, what would be rolling out the red carpet for these people and having them, be fans of our brand and refer their friends, even if they don't get selected,
Hmm.
that's that's that white glove feeling that we should
I
be
love
striving
it.
for.
I love it. Like what I try to do, even if I mean, I work in an agency environment now. So what I do for my candidates is once I have the feedback from the client, I'll do two things. I'll leave them a voicemail and I'll say, if you want to talk to me, I'd love to talk to you because I just want to thank you for going through the process
Yeah.
and investing time working with me and, investing time in our client. So, and that small email, and it's, I always write them, whenever they interview or they take the time, even if I've spoken with them myself, I say, hey, thank you, want you to know what's going on in the process. Just give them a little bit of an update. It doesn't have to be complicated. And it can be just an email,
Hmm.
simple as that. I try to, at least give them a phone call and then give them a very thoughtful thank you. Just saying, I know there's a lot of opportunity out there and I know you're looking at a lot of different options. Thanks for considering us as an employment opportunity or looking at us as a
Yeah.
partner to your career. It goes a long way. It's such a simple thing, but I know that the notes I get back from candidates who have appreciated that. And it's just like I had one that I sent him a note and he just said, I just appreciate you getting back to me because no other employer did. And just, I was like, really? And the fact that I did stood out to him, so it means so much to them, and just a small it's such a small thing. In some ways it seems small to me, but to them it's big, especially in this job market today.
Yeah, there's a story that I put in the book about when we enabled a couple of recruiting coordinators to reply to every candidate that did not get selected to move on to the next step. We did some research, and I found when I was in house with CA Technologies
Hmm.
that we weren't even looking at 80% of our applicants.
Mm,
Nobody looked at 80% of our
mm,
applicants. And so we trained a couple of recruiting coordinators to go through and look at every applicant and with some specific criteria, give them a preliminary yes, no, or maybe, right? And the ones that got a no got a direct response from them explaining why. Now we've got my dog in the background.
it's okay, no worries. It's all right.
um, Explaining why and inviting them to join our talent community to inviting them to join our talent community to keep in touch for future prospects and let us know how they're doing and how their career is progressing, right? So that maybe we can better tune in what they're applying to.
Mm.
And one candidate sent me a note and said, "Hey, I just got a rejection from a person at your company. I've been applying there for 3 years, and this is a person I was connected to on LinkedIn. And he said, this is the first time I've ever gotten a response.
Oh yeah, see,
And he said,
it's
I
so
loved it.
powerful.
Yeah.
It's just, I think sometimes that little human connection, and just knowing that it's coming from a human being and the way that it's written, even in our outreach too, because I've been learning this a lot lately. I have a few searches that are so unique is a word I would use. And I actually, so here's an example of how I used AI to actually help me to write a nice message. So I used Chat GPT to
Yeah.
write an outreach message to HVAC service techs. And it was so creative. It talks about the cool crew, and just that they're helping to bring warmth to people's lives. It was very, Chat GPT did a great job of just putting it kind of a template together. And
Mhm.
then I personalize it beyond that. So that's a way that you're using AI to personalize. And it was so cool. I had this candidate the other day tell me, this is the most creative message I've ever seen. And again, I would use Chat GPT to help write it,
Mhm.
but then I tailored it to that person.
Yeah.
And the personalization really meant a lot. And so it's fascinating how you can actually, candidates do appreciate the creativity. That's the
Yeah.
other piece of it. That the human, so you can actually use AI to become more human. And that's a good example of that. So it's a really interesting thing. He said most creative message he'd ever seen, and it made him respond. So I thought
Yeah.
that was cool.
Yeah.
So
And we do know that we can't just directly copy and paste from ChatGPT into
exactly.
anything
Yep.
because it
Yep.
does require some
Right.
human
You have to,
eyeballs,
yeah,
right, to
that's how
make
you
sure
use
it's
it.
not
You want to
crazy.
make sure you're looking at it, but it can help you. It's a good tool, which is exactly what it is.
Right.
It's like any other thing that we're using, like texting, or the way we send that message has to be creative, and so tailored and personalized is still the way to go.
It is, and that candidate that received the no message from one of our recruiting coordinators, uh, I invited him to come meet with me at my office. He was a Dallas guy,
Hmm.
and I said, I want to know more, right, about this experience that you've had and why you're happy about this no letter.
Hmm.
And he did, and it turned out he was applying to the wrong part of the company the whole time. And we had a job for him, and he was hired.
Yeah, isn't
Uh,
that neat? Oh, I
right,
love that. That's a great
right,
story.
right. In
It
theory,
gives me goosebumps.
today,
It's
yeah,
totally true. Yeah.
that was back in 2015. So in theory, today we could have AI kind of do some of that, but we have to worry a little bit about laws that are, to audit us for bias in the process.
So
And
true.
so
Yeah.
you
Hmm.
do still need human eyeballs on the process, even with ChatGPT, like you were just saying.
Yeah, if you don't do that too, you could run the risk of you could say it the wrong way, and it could be said the wrong way that doesn't necessarily, it could say something insensitive, or it could say something that doesn't necessarily, depending on what's trending too. Like you
Right.
have to kind of keep an eye on, gosh, who was it? There was I think it was, oh, Bukla, I want to say his name is. Um, Probably butchering his name, but he was another um, SourceCon presenter, and he was actually showing us a picture of one of the one of his recruiters had reached out to someone, and it turned out that person was a guru in the tech space. I can't remember exactly which, but he was like a rock star in the software engineering world. I just can't remember the name off the top of my head of who it was, but the story basically goes like this. He basically put it out there and said, I got this messaging from this recruiter that wasn't tailored. And then it crossed out the name, blurred the name, but could you imagine seeing your message in,
Right.
headlights or on headlines?
Yeah.
That's the other risk you have to kind of keep an eye out for, is you can damage your brand by sending the wrong message to the wrong person. And
Right.
that's it's like sourcing people getting procurement recruitment emails.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can do damage. And I've been for a long time now using AI tools to update job descriptions. And there's bias in the words that, right, we had to develop for one of our customers a large database of bias terms that you should
Mhm.
remove from your jobs. And
Yes,
ChatGPT
for
doesn't do
sure.
that. Yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's plenty of bias built into the messaging, so you just have to watch it a little bit for sure.
Well, that's why tools like Textio are so important too. Like that's one example of a tool that can help remove bias words from your job descriptions and review them
That's
in
right.
a thorough way. Um, yeah, it's such an important concept, and the more we think about it, the more important it becomes. So we've had a good conversation. Is there anything else you want to share today?
Well, if this is going to be online before November 9th and 10th. We have the TalentNet Live Conference here in Dallas, November 9th and 10th, and there will be books signed and given away there. And there will be 30 talent acquisition leaders and subject matter experts and influencers from our space on stage for a day-long event. And you can find out about that at talentnetlive.com. And you can find the book at hiring-humans.com. And
Fantastic.
if you
Go
pick it
ahead.
up, give me a review on Amazon.
It sounds good. We definitely will. I think I'm going to check out your book myself because I loved the title. I loved what the goal of it was, and this was a great conversation on just getting back to basics, in my opinion, and still using technology. Kind of, I think it's a front and center for us right now. But hey, thanks for joining me today. This was a great conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Good to see you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you. Hold on one sec here. All right, we're off.
All right.